Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I'm Andrew Scaff. He's Mike Werman. Today we'll talk a little bit about Major League Baseball, but not much, and preview the NFL's Week 3. But we'll start today's show by recapping the NFL's Week 2, talk a little bit about our bets also. There's been some more surprising developments in the NFL second week. What do you find more surprising, Mike? That the Saints, Bucks, Falcons, and Commanders are all 2-0? Or is it more surprising that the Chargers and Bengals are both 0-2?
Early in the season, you always have teams that are 2-0 or 0-2 that you don't expect. So I don't know if any of them is exactly surprising. I think maybe you could say Tampa Bay is maybe the most surprising, simply because, well, Tampa went to Minneapolis and beat the Vikings, and then won handily in against Chicago, who everybody thought was going to be quite a bit better, but they haven't seemed like have really improved much or at all. And like, it's Baker Mayfield being the quarterback rather than rather than Tom Brady. So I think Tampa maybe is most surprising. The Chargers, well, struggles for the Chargers are kind of never surprising, because the Chargers are kind of just star-crossed. It seems like they have bad luck. They have injuries, they have bad coaching. They just and they also played two pretty good teams. So they had, they played Miami at home, very close game. They played at Tennessee, very close. So they lost two kind of coin flip games. So that's not that surprising. But like some of these NFC South teams that are they're playing terrible teams in the NFC. It's easy to be 2-0 if all you play is the Saints. They beat the Panthers and they beat the Titans at home. But I don't know, the Falcons 2-0, I guess, is a little surprising. So I thought they'd be terrible. I still think they will be terrible. I guess maybe Washington at 2-0 is a little surprising, but they had one home game against Arizona, who was thought probably to be maybe the worst team in the league. And then they play against Denver, who hasn't seemed to have improved under Sean Payton. So it's hard to say which teams are surprising and which teams aren't right now. And so I don't know. Do you have a pick for the most surprising record, or least surprising record? The Bengals were 0-2 last year, so that's, and then they
so that's maybe less surprising. And Burrow's been injured already and he missed the preseason and maybe limping a bit at the end of the last game too. So it's not surprising. If he's not 100%, then it's not surprising the team is 100%. But the Chargers have scored, I think, the third most points in the AFC and have 2 losses to show for it. That's, kind of unfortunate for them, I guess, anyway. But they have given up even more points, obviously. So their defense doesn't seem to be able to hold anything. Do you think the Chargers wish they would have made a coaching change after their playoff collapse last year? Because that came up at the end of last season. That I may have been on the hot seat. Staley may have been on the hot seat at the end of because of the playoff collapse. Do you think
was thinking Staley was on the hot seat going into the playoffs, and then I think I actually texted you during that game and said, Chargers up 28-0. I don't think Staley's on the hot seat anymore. We're 27-0. I don't think Staley's on the hot seat anymore. And then they lost. So he would have been fired there, because he makes a lot of questionable decisions. He doesn't seem to, he is also not an offensive minded coach. I think he's from the defensive side. So they did bring in an offensive coordinator, I guess, Kellen Moore from Dallas, to change things around. The offense has been pretty good, but the defense has been bad. So I don't know. It's only 2 games still. There are 9 0-2 teams in the NFL right now that you mentioned. You mentioned a lot of them. 5 of them are in the AFC, 4 are in the NFC. We have New England, Cincinnati, Houston, the Chargers, and Denver in the AFC. We have Minnesota, Chicago, Carolina, and Arizona in the NFC. Do you think any of these teams, or how many of these teams, do you think will make the playoffs this season?
I'm pretty sure the records of 0-2 teams making the playoffs are not so great.
Mm-hmm. 0-3 teams, I think, are even worse. The Chiefs, I think, made it after being 0-4, or even 0-5 one year. They won like 12 straight games after going 0-4 recently. Like I think that was maybe 2015 under Andy Reid or something. But that's unusual.
But there are so many of those 0-2 teams that you mentioned. You'd think at least one of them would have to make the playoffs. Would be surprising if maybe only one of them made the playoffs. Maybe two teams will make the playoffs. Which of those two teams? I don't know.
Well, I think you probably think Cincinnati, if Burrow is okay, will make the playoffs.
As long as Burrow is relatively healthy.
They were 0-2 last season. They were and they looked not so great, but then I think they ended up being 12-4 over. Would have been 13-4 had they finished the DeMar Hamlin Bills game. So I think they were 2-3 actually at one point, and then they won 11 out of 12.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a strong finish, and so maybe they'll do that again. But 0-2 is not good. But I still think Cincinnati probably. I think, I don't know, probably not New England because of their division that they're in, especially because Miami's pretty good. And I think the Bills are going to be fine, even though they had a rocky first game. I don't think the Jets are probably gonna fade because they looked really bad against Dallas. I think it's probably, and they're looking at people like Joe Flacco as a potential signing, or Chad Henne. I think they were actually looking at one point to sign. So maybe they'll bring him back. But I think New England maybe, but I think maybe Houston definitely not. I don't think the Chargers, Denver. It's hard to say. You maybe going in, you thought at least one of those teams was a playoff team. And they're only one game behind the division right now, so they're both close games.
Right.
In the NFC, I think there's only one team that has a chance at 0-2 to make the playoffs, and that's Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see Carolina or Arizona as contenders. And I don't think Arizona even wants to be a contender. It seems like they also probably don't want Houston to be a contender because they have Houston's first round draft pick. So it's possible they'll have two very, very high picks, maybe even the top two picks in the draft. Chicago, I don't see them turning it around unless maybe if they surprise the Chiefs. I don't know. I don't expect that. But Minnesota is the team that I thought, well, they might be able to make the playoffs because, well, they can challenge Detroit maybe for the division, and they've been a playoff team fairly regularly over the past several seasons. They still have, Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins is a decent quarterback. So, and their defense is okay at least, and so I guess I think probably 4 to 5 of those 9 have chances of making the playoffs. I'd say probably 2 or 3 at best will make the playoffs.
So do you think more of the 2-0 teams will make the playoffs than the 0-2 teams? Of the surprising 2-0s.
Okay, well, because there are 9 right now. There are 9 2-0 teams, 9 0-2, and I guess that makes it 14 1-1 teams.
Of the surprising ones that we mentioned, like at the top of the episode, Saints, Bucks, Falcons, Commanders. How many of them do you think make the playoffs?
I think the Saints, because I think that division is terrible. I don't think the Falcons are as good as the Saints are.
Well, you would just assume one of those will make it, right? Because 3 of those teams have the division, right?
Yeah, and
unless Carolina is the team that comes out of it, right?
I would say if I had to rank the 3 NFC South teams as playoff contenders, I would go Saints, Buccaneers, Falcons. I think the Falcons don't have enough talent really, and especially the quarterback position. I think actually Baker Mayfield might be. He's led a team to the playoffs before, and I think Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl, a couple of years back now, but they still have a pretty. They have good receivers. They have Godwin and they have Evans still. They have a pretty good defense, although it's a little bit older than they've been. But they've Rashad White has been a good running back, so they have the pieces there. So I think if Mayfield can rein in his sort of recklessness, I think they have a chance, because again, it's the NFC. Even though the NFC right now looks like their records have been better in their league play and all that stuff against the AFC. I think that's a blip. It took a miracle really for the of weird, horrible things happening to the Chiefs, for example, for the Lions to eke out a 1-point win, and then they got kind of lost at a shootout against the Seahawks, who were blown out by the Rams at home. So I don't know if Detroit is quite as good as they thought they were after that win. Especially they had 10 days to prepare for that home game against Seattle and gave up points. So I don't. Of the AFC 2-0, there's only 2 AFC 2-0s, and those are the Dolphins and the Ravens, and I don't know if either of those are really surprises. But I would say Eagles, Cowboys, and 49ers probably are the 2-0 teams that I'm most confident in. But
but they were,
and then
we
maybe
kind
New
of
Orleans.
projected them to be playoff teams anyway, right?
So, so
that's not surprising. But it's just from the surprising groups.
It's one of those things where this is just 2 weeks out of an 18-week season, and if you just look at 2 weeks results even anywhere in the season, sometimes those can look a little weird because it's such a small sample size. And I think because it's at the beginning of the season, it's even weirder. So I don't necessarily even think that 0-2 teams are less likely to make the playoffs. It's simply because most teams that go 0-2 are bad teams, and bad teams don't tend to make the playoffs. If you're a good team who goes 0-2, what are your odds? I think that's a lot different. Even if you're a good team that goes 0-3, this is a team that you thought probably at some point was going to be a playoff team. It's not like, this is the team we thought was going to finish, 4-12 or 4-13, and they went 0-4, and then they made the playoffs. That's not what people think. It's like the teams like they were in the playoffs last year, or we think they're going to be really good. Like the Jaguars didn't start very well last year, and they had a surge. So some of those statistics I think are a little bit misleading because it's sort of correlation as well. It's not just simply causation. Like if you go 0-2, therefore you've lost all these games, so you aren't going to be able to make it up.
It's a sample size.
It's like saying teams that go 0-2 in weeks 6 through 6 and 7 are this likely to make the playoffs. Or it would be. I think it's about the same, percentage. So I don't.
It's 2 weeks in now. It's time to start declaring that the sky is falling. So that's what media tends to do.
If the Chiefs had lost to the Buccaneers, do you think the sky would be falling? It wasn't a pretty victory in Jacksonville. What did you think of the Chiefs there? Their offense has been kind of sputtering. The defense surprisingly has been very good though.
Really good defense so far. I mean, they've only allowed 2 touchdowns combined defensively in the 2 weeks. And I mean, they've been under on the betting lines even for the first 2 weeks, which is a little against character for the Chiefs team, at least anyway. And it's typically we've seen the defense be basically porous for 5 or 6 weeks before they decide to start figuring out how to play together, and then by the playoffs they're usually at least passable. And they seem very one of the better defenses in the league, I think, to this point, at least from points allowed perspective so far. And this week particularly was sloppy though. There were a lot of penalties.
That seemed to come from
together
looking at Jawan Taylor under a microscope, which I think only happened because of the attention placed on the opening night, the Thursday night opener, where Taylor was jumping early, but it seemed like a lot of tackles had been doing that last year, and nobody was getting called. But then I think because the Chiefs did it, They start getting if you watch the Eagles, Lane Johnson gets off early every time, and it's similar to Jawan Taylor as a right tackle. It seems like the right tackle gets earlier than the left sometimes, usually even. But like, so like, and then like so Taylor, he, in terms of non-penalties, he was very good at protecting Mahomes, better than the Chiefs had at probably right tackle since Mitchell Schwartz was sort of forced into retirement. But the Chiefs haven't. Their offense it hasn't been good, even with Kelsey back. Kelsey was, I guess, it was his first week back, so he's probably still limited. But 17 points is not very many points, and I would say, well, if the Chiefs only score 17 points, if they win, that's that's really the defense really stepping up, and that's what happened.
Right. But they still haven't been like forcing a lot of turnovers too. Like even some of the very poorest Chiefs defenses like had, gotten bailed out by timely turnovers.
Yeah.
And I haven't really seen that yet this season anyway. There've been maybe a couple
have turned the ball over quite a bit.
Yeah, the Chiefs have turned it over.
Yeah, they had another kind of Sky Moore-esque muffed punt like inside the 5-yard line that only was turned in, or inside the 10-yard line was only turned into a field goal. But I think there were 3 red zone trips for the Jaguars and 3 field goals. So no touchdowns. And so that was, the defense was really good. Chris Jones played really, really well in his first week back, better than I would have thought.
Especially for having missed the entirety of the preseason. That was, quite a performance. And what, 1.5 sacks?
Yeah, well, they credited 1.5. Karlaftis also had 1.5, and there were a couple others. She said, had 4 or 5 sacks on the night, on the afternoon, I guess. It was also the only noon/1 p.m. kickoff time on Sunday that the Chiefs will have at all this year.
Is that right?
So, they don't play. I think they play a Christmas Day game at noon, but that's a lot different from I think a noon start on a Sunday when you have most of the games going, and because the NFL usually wants the best teams. So usually also West Coast teams play late, but like the best teams they want in the later 4:00/3 o'clock Central time slot, so they can be the national kind of game of the afternoon.
Featured game.
Yeah, and so the Chiefs are either prime time or that late game. Again, they play late sometimes also because they play in the AFC West, so they'll play at Denver, they'll play at the Chargers and at Las Vegas. But so those are 3 kind of automatic late games. But so that I think so in some ways that drop that Richie James had was when he was blinded by the sun. That won't happen really ever because of the way the schedule is going to shake out. So they're also in Florida at noon. It wasn't or I guess at 1 o'clock in Jacksonville. So they'll play. They won't play they'll play Miami, but they play Miami in Germany. So I guess maybe I don't know. The Frankfurt game, that's going to be I guess prime time German game, or at least late afternoon in Germany. 10 or something here.
9 or 10 a.m. Yeah, I think.
So it would be like a 3 to 4 probably start at the earliest.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's 6 hours off, right? Maybe 7.
6 or 7, depending. I think it depends on also when the when standard time switches over in the respective countries. But so that's the only early game that the Chiefs are going to play. So in some ways, but I don't know if you could also say, well, are they even ready for prime time? Because they've just been off. Like the offense has labored. Mahomes doesn't seem like he has a lot of people to throw to. It's like, if he throws it to something like last week, first week, everybody was dropping the passes and, in some ways giving the ball to the other team and allowing them to score. So I think the Chiefs offense is not, I don't know, it's not clicking out. No, is this a Matt Nagy thing? Do you think the Chiefs missed the enemy? Because Washington has been playing pretty well.
Yeah, I think maybe it just seems like the running game hasn't clicked quite yet, and that may be like what gives the team a little more balance. At least they can keep the opponents like, you know, somewhat honest by running the ball sometimes just to make them think that they might run in the future. But I think they'd gone to almost an exclusive passing game until the second half of the Jacksonville game when they did run the ball a little bit and with some success.
At least when Pacheco ran it, they didn't have any success when Edwards-Helaire ran it. Like
Yeah.
they also haven't had much passing. They haven't had much of the running backs at all. Like the passing game to the running backs hasn't been very good either. Like there haven't been any explosive, like McKinnon plays, or even Clyde Edwards-Helaire had some early in his career, but he just looks lost out there almost. Like it's I don't know. I think Pacheco is good occasionally running. He runs really hard and he gets some big runs, but like sometimes he just doesn't do anything at all. And like out of the passing game, he's kind of he's not very great either. So like it's I don't know. The whole offense has been bad, and I don't know.
Yeah.
And like Mahomes, like this is maybe even a critique we've had before, is that basically they rely on Mahomes to work his magic all the time. And like so like it's 3rd and 8. Well, let's let Mahomes do something. He'll make the first down, and that's what he does because he'll either find an open guy or he'll run for the first down. And like that seems like it happens a lot, and it's even maybe more pronounced this year. Like
yeah, maybe a little of it is just that he's going to have to adjust a little bit to this different offensive line because it seems like they can actually give him some more time to stand in the pocket. And that may open up some different types of runs that he can do, but he has to be kind of, used to the timing of how that's going to work out anyway. And it seemed like it's starting to come along, but I don't know. I still think there's enough promising signs from the offensive line being able to block longer. But I wouldn't be worried about the team anyway.
Yeah, so but Mahomes is running, I think, a little bit more than this year than he did last year. And I think it's mainly not because he's also just not pressured, but like also I think the receivers aren't getting open. So he's been forced, I think, to run more. He had 3 kneel downs to end this past game. So he had so right now he has 13 carries for 75 yards. But if you take away those kneel downs, he's probably 10 carries for about 80 yards. So he would run, Pacheco, for example, has 93 yards. He's the leading rusher. So Mahomes is almost the leading rusher. And he's not really, he can run when he needs to, but he's not Jalen Hurts, or he's not Justin Fields. He's a mobile quarterback, but not a running quarterback, I would say. So like there's not much rushing coming from the other team. Like the Chiefs have 191 total yards rushing right now in 2 games, and Mahomes has 75 of them. Again, that's also with kneel down. So like he has about 40% of the team's rushing success. And so like it seems like everything is Mahomes right now. And the offense is not, like, I don't know, the Chiefs aren't scoring easily like I think Miami is, or some of these other teams are, like where is different systems. Do you think the Chiefs offense is stale, or is it just that whether it takes time to get going? Kelsey's been missing, receivers are young, and as time goes on, it'll get better.
I think it's the second one. I'm not super worried about him yet. If this is week 7 or 8 and they're still having the same problems, I think I'll be a little more concerned, but it just seems like, Kelsey's just now back, and he had really only one play where they looked like they were Mahomes and Kelsey were in sync, and that was that touchdown pass.
He dropped a pass or 2 early. Yeah. He had those 2 penalties. The first penalty was like pretty iffy. He's like, ripped his chin strap off, it seemed like, and that seemed kind of, why did they call that? I don't know why
that's a penalty. I guess we don't know what he said, but there was like no one around him, so it wasn't like yelling at someone. I don't know.
Yeah. It seems like if the Chiefs yell, sometimes the referees call penalties, because they did that with Chris Jones last year when he sacked Matt Ryan and then somehow got this huge penalty that basically cost the Chiefs the game against Indianapolis last year. Yeah. But do you know the Chiefs' receiving leader on the year in terms of receiving yards?
No, I'm not sure. Is it because like Valdez Scantling hasn't caught a whole lot of passes. Maybe Sky Moore had that like relatively long catch in the last game, but I think he only had like 2 catches total.
Sky Moore has 3 receptions on the year for 70 yards.
Yeah.
1 touchdown. It's 54. He had a 54-yard gain at
Yeah.
the end of the game. This when Mahomes bought a lot of time and kind of played with the Jacksonville defender who was trying to sack him and just kind of lofted it wide open. More after several seconds of time was bought by Mahomes. But Sky Moore has 70 yards. Noah Gray has 69 yards. Valdez-Scantling has 61 yards. But actually, Justin Watson is the leader in the club with 107 yards receiving,
Wow.
5 receptions on 9 targets. He has also lost a fumble. So
one, potentially bad fumble too. Yes.
Yeah. So if Justin Watson is leading the team in receiving yards, that's not a good sign, I don't think.
Yeah. But he doesn't seem to be dropping all of the passes that he was delivered last season. There were lots of drops last year that were.
He has 5 receptions on 9 targets, so that's not so great. But Sky Moore is 3 on 7, so that's worse. Moore dropped a couple. Tony, of course, has had his drops. He had a better game.
No drops in this last game, though.
He did have a fumble, but it didn't end up hurting the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Was it on a running play or a passing play? He was trying to get ahead, but he looked very good at the early stages of the game. Then they kind of went away from him. And then just I don't know. Somehow Mahomes had over 300 yards passing to like, with Kelsey having 24 yards and nobody else having a big day. That's incredible how he had that many yards. But it was, it's been labored, to say the least, I think. Yeah.
Do you think they're in for a bounce back game then against the Bears, or are you worried about this being maybe they'll mentally be expecting a blowout and then underperform?
I think if it wasn't the Bears, I'd be worried. But also, I think since the Chiefs lost opening night at Arrowhead, I think they will play stronger. And it seems like their whole team's going to be there because we have Jones and Kelsey. Both of them were gone on opening night. I don't think we'll have the egregious mistakes like they had in the first game against Detroit. So I would say, I think the Chiefs are favored by, it was 13.5 points. I think it's down to 12.5. I don't know. That's a high spread, but I think the Chiefs win fairly comfortably. But I think the gentlemanly Andy Reid, I would be surprised if they won by 2 touchdowns. But sometimes if it's just like, oh, the Chiefs are just playing and like, oh, we can't really help it, maybe they will. But they don't like to win by a lot of points.
Well, especially if the defense plays anything like they have the last 2 weeks, then I can't really. It's hard to like predict that the Bears will score many points.
Justin Fields runs it well, so Chiefs sometimes have trouble with running quarterbacks,
mobile quarterbacks.
But
this defense seems different than the last several years of the Chiefs' defense.
But also, I would guess, well, if Fields isn't passing it well, but he's just running, like there's not as much damage a quarterback can do on the ground compared to the air. Really, it's I guess Lamar Jackson, but like did that too. But like he still would pass for 2 or 3 touchdowns in a game in his MVP season. So like I don't. Fields this year has been not great. I don't know if there's not the wide receiving threats out there that I think the Bears, I guess they have DJ Moore now on the team. And they still have Chase Claypool, but Claypool has he's been targeted 10 times. He has only 36 yards receiving through 2 games. DJ Moore has 129 yards through 2 games. Herbert has been pretty good on the ground and in the air. But mostly, it hasn't been, the offense. It's kind of typical Bears offense. It's mostly run, a little bit of pass, and I think this week, then wasn't it that Justin Jefferson on the Vikings now has more career yards receiving than any Chicago Bears receiver ever?
Career.
We talked about that several weeks ago, or maybe last year.
Shocking, yeah.
I think Mike Ditka is still in the top 5 receiving yards, and he's like 4,000 or something like that. It's not a lot for the Bears, even though they've been a storied franchise for 75, almost 100
Yeah.
years.
Typically known for their running game
Mm-hmm.
and for their defense, and not so much for their wide receivers and quarterback play, though. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we think of Walter Payton, we think of those kinds of teams. The defense with the of the '85 Bears in that era, Richard Dent and uh, Steve McMichael, that sort of thing. But yeah, the receiving yards totals are history. Johnny Morris, who played in the 50s and 60s, has 5,059 yards. He's the number one. Harlan Hill, who also played in the 50s and 60s. So the positions of Johnny Morris, he is a flanker back. Harlan Hill is a left end. So we can say the positions aren't even wide receiver.
Yeah.
Now we get to Alshon Jeffrey, who is the 2012 to 2016 is the third leading receiver all time, 45-49, 4,549 yards. Walter Payton is fourth, 45-38, and then Mike Ditka is 4,503 yards. Curtis Conway is almost 4,500 as well. So, but yeah, there's not a lot of long-term success for Bears receivers, and I don't know if maybe one of their current guys is going to be somebody who breaks the list, but right now,
what was DJ Moore's total for his career?
well, DJ Moore has only been on the
Not his Bears totals, his previous
129 yards for the
Bears.
Yeah, DJ Moore has 5,330, which I believe would be, yes, it is the highest all time. So Johnny
Would
Moore
be
is
the Bears leader.
Yeah. So Darnell, yeah.
If all those yards were with the Bears. Yes.
Yeah, so DJ Moore has had a more successful career than any
and I think they only had a couple of targets of him in the first game, which just seems like pretty surprising. Maybe their biggest acquisition of the offseason was actually getting Justin Fields an actual receiver. And
yeah, well, they tried to bring in Claypool at the end because he was at the end of last year because he was being, I don't know, maybe trouble-ish in Pittsburgh, or because Pickens, I think, was becoming the number one player there, or Deontay Johnson were both kind of ahead of Claypool in the pecking order, and so so they have some young guys there. I think Darnell Mooney is okay, but they don't have any. Well, it's like Fields is not, a great. Maybe it's also the offensive scheme is not terribly good, but they've had a couple different schemes. Well, they have I don't know. It's it's just typical Chicago Bears football, I guess. But
yeah, think they're missing Matt Nagy as coach?
Well, given the Chiefs' lack of offensive success, I don't know. Yeah, Nagy had one good year or two good years, decent with the Bears with Mitchell Trubisky as quarterback, but he hasn't been necessarily. I don't know. Maybe he was a difference maker last year as the quarterback coach, but as an offensive coordinator, he had never been with Mahomes. He had been just the Alex Smith offensive coordinator, and that team famously, I think, flamed out in that loss to the Titans in the second half. I guess Kelsey was gone, but I've read recently also that some people think, well, they put Mahomes in the second half, they would have won those playoff games and possibly gone to the Super Bowl because they had Mahomes there, and maybe even he was maybe even would have been more of a surprise factor in the playoffs if they just broken him out there, and that would have been. I think that's an interesting hypothetical, but did any of the we were talking about the Chiefs game? Did any of the other games catch your eye in any way? That were any of them surprising, or see any?
Like in terms of betting, there were a few that were interesting, at least anyway. I know one was particularly annoying for me, at least anyway. One saved me though in a bet also, but
yeah. So how did you do on your three best bets of the week?
Yeah, my confidence picks were worse than my overall picks, Mike. So I'm not sure what to make of some of this, at least anyway, right? So
Again, it's a small sample size. We'll have to extract. We'll have to like go through the whole year and then be able to mine the data later and look
yeah,
at it from a.
I know. So my first pick, I'd gone since Green Bay had played well against Chicago. I expected Green Bay to perform because I thought Chicago was decent, that maybe Green Bay was just better than Chicago. And I think after week 2, and I would see like, oh, maybe Chicago is just that bad, and Green Bay is, beating a very bad Bears team is not actually impressive. I had Bears -1.5. The line moved quite a bit to um, Atlanta being favored as the week went on. But when we made these picks, the Bears were favored, or the
Packers, yeah.
Packers were favored by 1.5 points. But Atlanta did end up winning that game.
Like,
25
24.
It wasn't that close anyway, but
it was 25-24. They won by 1 point. Atlanta did. So
it was closer than that.
So if you had maybe, I think it was 1.5 at the end, the Atlanta was favored. So if you had gotten the line at the very end, like if we could have waited till Sunday, you would have seen it drop and say, okay, that's what. Then you would have won had you bet on.
It was a late field goal, so like the Falcons actually won the game on a field goal late.
Yeah, I had thought the Packers were going to both win the game and cover the spread in that game.
Yeah,
so I was surprised. But I guess it just shows that maybe I guess you could say maybe the Falcons aren't that bad. I don't think I doubt it. I don't think they're very good. But it's the NFC, and Jordan Love looked good in the first game. He didn't look terrible in the second game, but I don't know. The Packers don't have a lot of. I don't know. I know their defense doesn't strike me as great, and their offense, with Love compared to Rodgers, even with Rodgers, their offense wasn't as high powered as it probably should have been. Although we gave credit to Hackett for being this offensive guru who could be both an NFL head coach and also a coordinator who could lure in Aaron Rodgers, and that hasn't turned out well for him or for Aaron Rodgers, quite frankly. We saw what happened. But so you lost that bet. That was your first one?
On a late field goal, that's right. Yeah.
Field goal. We talked about the Chiefs. I did bet one of my best bets was the Chiefs -3. It looked like for a while the Chiefs were going to lose outright that game. I thought the second half they controlled it, but the first half was bad and they couldn't do anything. And somehow they were only down by 3 points most of the time. So it ended up being a comfortable win-ish because it ended the best way for Andy Reid with a kneel down near the goal line to cement this gentlemanly win. But fortunately for me, they were up by more than 3 when that happened. I had actually thought I had also bet when the Chiefs were 3.5. I thought that was a good bet too. So even though it went down, I still would have gone with the Chiefs, and they won by 17-9, so they won by 8. So that was a fairly comfortable win. And at the end they could have scored another touchdown to make it 2-touchdown game rather than 8. So that was a good one for me. This whole week was actually good for my best bets, not for my overall picks where it was actually a lot better than previous week, but it was around 500 overall. But for my best 3, I knocked it out of the park. But you
were better at confidence than I was at confidence, but at overall picks for somehow I don't know how. They're doing better this time.
Small sample size.
One thing to note though on the Chiefs game too that we maybe didn't mention yet was I guess they actually did come out like relatively clean after the game. Like there were 3 defensive players that were injured during the game that were not mentioned in the post game by Andy Reid as being worrisome in any way, apparently. So because Nick Bolton and Willie Gay both went down with injuries during the game, but apparently are okay.
Maybe cramping involved because it was hot. It was over 100 degrees on the field, and I think it's not, we're not that far removed from hot summer, but the last couple of weeks have been tapering at least towards fall, and so I think the temperature difference. And you saw the Chiefs were forced to wear the red jerseys and the I don't know. Again, I don't know really how much hotter a red jersey is than a white jersey, but there's that little psychological effect that Jacksonville, I guess, uses at home, and the Dolphins did this too, and the Buccaneers usually do this too. And in the day games, they'll wear the white uniforms to stay cool.
They choose the white, so the other team has to wear their more colorful jersey.
Yeah, I like the Chiefs in the red anyway. As long as they have red shirts or red pants, that's my favorite. I'm not a fan. I'm certainly not. My least favorite is actually the red on red, the all red look. I don't like the color.
The Thursday night monochrome look that they did for a while.
The white on white is okay, but I like the white. I like the opposite colors, but red on red is just, I think, too much. It looks gimmicky, and it's like when the I don't know. The Bills are all blue. I don't like. I think when it's like baseball, I usually like the color for the pants and the shirt to be the same. But for football, I like contrast. Similar for hockey, I think I like contrast between the top and the bottom.
No.
But how'd your second pick go, Dr. Scaff?
Second pick was a game that I was pretty comfortable with until like the fourth quarter anyway. I had Miami -2 at New England. Miami looked pretty good for most of the game, but New England made it interesting late. I think Miami had gotten up to 24-10, and then New England scored a touchdown at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and then Miami missed a field goal, which gave New England a chance, and they got it down to like midfield or so before their drive petered out anyway. But I thought it was like almost a lock that turned into a little bit worrisome from the betting perspective. But yeah, Miami ended up winning by a touchdown, plenty more than the 2 points needed at least.
Yeah, that was one of my picks in the overall bracket that I actually picked. That was one of my upset picks. I picked New England to upset the Dolphins at home, because I thought the Dolphins were traveling from Los Angeles. If they went back to Miami, then up to New England, those are long trips, and it's a divisional game. I thought maybe Belichick would have something interesting in mind. They didn't score as many points as they did against the Chargers, but they didn't score as many points themselves. And I don't think I still don't think Mac Jones is the answer at quarterback for New England. But they are, but Miami has looked pretty good this year. They also looked really good at the beginning of the season last year, and then they kind of faded. That kind of corresponded though with Tua's injury. So it seems like maybe if Tagovailoa can stay healthy, maybe the Dolphins are going to be really good. But if he gets hurt, I guess that's a trouble for anybody. But as we said, Tua is more injury prone probably than the average quarterback, and his injuries maybe are more serious. Especially, he had that horrible hip injury in college, and then he had awful concussions that could lead to disability perhaps, or some in the future. And this is something that they need to really be careful with. But right now, it's going pretty well for Miami. My second pick also involved a Florida team and was victorious for me. And this was the Bears Buccaneers over 41.5. The Bears the Bears Bucks, it was 27-17 Buccaneers, and so they covered it. I think it took a defensive touchdown from the Buccaneers to put them over. It was slightly under most of the time, but it came out over in the end. I thought the Buccaneers offense was pretty good, and it was continued to score pretty well. I thought actually the Bears might be able to get some more momentum going, but neither team scored quite as many as maybe I thought they would, but it still was over 41.5. So I was pleased with that. I didn't watch that game very closely though, because it was on at the same time as the Chiefs.
Yeah, how soon did they cross the over? Was it late? Did it take close to the end, or was it? Because they were plenty over, I guess.
I was thinking it was the fourth quarter.
It was pretty close.
I was thinking it was the fourth quarter when it went over, but I thought it was a defensive touchdown that put them over the top. If I'm
a 4-yard interception return
with 2 minutes
just outside the 2-minute warning.
Yeah. So that was nice because
It came down to the wire though to get to the over.
Came down to the wire. If though, however, the only thing that would have been a problem then at the end would have been, so if Chicago if Chicago had tied the game 2020, it would have gone to overtime, and then probably one of those teams would have won and it would have kicked over. But if Chicago had gone to the field and missed a game-tying field goal, that would have been the worst case scenario. Yeah. Also, if they scored the go-ahead touchdown, that would have been okay. But I actually also had the Buccaneers in my other picks. I had them covering the spread on that one, and they did cover. So, but yeah, so that one turned out in my favor. They had two. There were it was only 20-10 at the end of the third quarter, and even through much of the fourth quarter, it was still sitting on 30. So it was nice to get those 2 touchdowns
in the last 7 minutes of the game or so. Yeah. Let's see.
How about your third?
My third pick. I was pretty confident in going into the game, but then horrible injury derailed that chances fairly early. I had Cleveland -2.5 at Pittsburgh, and Nick Chubb's injury surely had some impact on it, but maybe more of an impact was Deshaun Watson's terrible play. Maybe
yes.
Multiple defensive touchdowns scored by Pittsburgh ensured their victory. So Pittsburgh ended up winning the game, so Cleveland had no chance to cover on that.
Yeah, if there's anybody that I enjoy seeing bad things happen to, at least on the football field, I don't want to see him get hurt or whatever. But like when touchdowns on the other team, or he throws interceptions, or he doesn't get yours, I enjoy seeing. And I wonder, I thought this at the end because there was a borderline call, or maybe not even borderline. It was a missed call. They could have called pass interference at the end when Pittsburgh on I think it was a 4th down play. There was a pass to the sideline, and the Pittsburgh defensive back seemed like grabbed the shoulder pad, but they didn't call it because I would have given Cleveland a first down. And you wonder if it, like these little close things at the end, if the referees are a little bit, I wouldn't say biased, but less likely to give the benefit of the doubt to Cleveland simply because they have such an unseemly player at quarterback.
I mean, he was not very accurate during the game. I think he had almost 20 incomplete passes thrown. He didn't throw that many passes. It wasn't like he threw like 60, 70 passes in the game. It was, 40 passes attempted, and something like 20 or 22 completions was all. So, I mean, if they gave him 4 more shots, it was by no means a guaranteed that he was going to do anything with it anyway.
Yeah.
So like if Cleveland's upset about that, then they probably could have just played a little better at any other point in the game, and that wouldn't have been close.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I was just I was just thinking though that maybe that will be something because last year Cleveland was bad enough so it didn't matter, they weren't in playoff contention or something like that. But Cleveland has a pretty good team. They throttled Cincinnati in week 1. Now probably the biggest story is Nick Chubb getting his knee just annihilated. Perhaps it was really bad. They didn't even show the replay, but if you saw parts of it, it looked very like Joe Theismann-esque or Alex Smith-esque almost, where it just like the knee, it bent in ways that was.
It's like the Willis McGahee. You remember that injury? Yeah. It was similar to that. I think it looked like it was a dislocation. Probably all the tendons and ligaments are probably
Yeah, I don't think it seemed like bones.
I don't think it's broken bones though. Yeah, that's what I still haven't seen anything about the injury, so I'm not sure what they've actually seen yet. But I don't think it's broken bones. Would be a guess, at least anyway, from having seen it.
I think that was the same knee that he had hurt earlier at some point.
He'd had all of the ligaments reattached apparently once already.
So that could be an issue for Chubb. It seems like the Ford, the backup, seemed to play very well though when he went in, and it's also possible they'll bring back Kareem Hunt, who's a free agent, or Leonard Fournette, but Hunt has been playing. He played well for the Browns. Maybe not as well he played for the Chiefs when before he had his unfortunate criminal incidents. But which maybe having both Deshaun Watson and Kareem Hunt in the same backfield would not be the best in terms of publicity for the NFL and trying to attract female fans, but I think at least Hunt seems like it was like a one-time thing, at least, where I think Watson is multiple time offender, it seems like, so alleged. But yeah, I didn't bet on that game, but I did end up winning my bets on the Cleveland Pittsburgh, because I had Pittsburgh winning outright, covering the spread, and the under, I believe, and it in the over on that game, and it went over.
Yeah.
So but that was your final one. My final pick was an interesting one as well. I had the Rams at +8 and ended up finishing at +7. So our overall competition ended up being a push. So neither of us won. But the Rams kicked a field goal at the very, very end of the game. They were down by 10, 30-20, and they kicked a field goal to make it 30-23. So they only lost by 7, and they covered the spread. And I was very happy about that. It reminds me of the time on The Simpsons where Lisa was helping Homer bet on games, and I can't remember what team it was, but they asked what Lisa's best day ever was, and he says, well, maybe the Saints or something were favored by 4, and they were only ahead by 3, but then they kicked a meaningless field goal at the end of the game to cover the spread, and that was her favorite day. And so I went 3-0 this week because the Rams kicked a meaningless field goal to cover the spread at the end, and so I'm pleased. And that I was 0-3 week 1. Now I'm 3-0, so I'm an even 3-3 nowadays. Going into week 3. How about you, Dr. Scaff?
So I was 2-1 in week 1. This week I was 1-2. So I also am even 3-3. We are tied after week 2.
You're tied. In terms of our overall betting, though, you have outclassed me. Good.
We are not tied.
You're not tied. I almost tied this week because I was close to 500. Had a couple things broken my way, I would have been in the money, but that's what happens. But you finished in positive territory both weeks now, and are maybe on your way to becoming a professional gambler, it seems.
Yeah, this was by far the best week I expected, at least anyway. But there were still several games that I thought I should have gotten that the teams didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Yeah,
right. And that Rams field goal cost me about $100 too, because that I had San Francisco ±7, and they had it cleared, and then that field goal turned it into a push. So I didn't lose the bet, but I didn't win the bet either.
Yeah, I had that field goal on the Monday night game also turned the New Orleans Carolina game, a horrible game. I feel bad in some ways for the people that I guess that were subjected to, because those ended up being kind of two awful games to watch, because we had the horrible injury, sloppy play in Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's offense looked terrible. The defense got some big plays, but that wasn't a, it was 26-20. It ended up being a close game, but it was not a well played close game, I don't think. At least if you're a fan of offensive football. And I tend to be. But I like defensive plays, but I also like touchdowns and things like that are scored by the offense. The offense for Pittsburgh was outscored 12 to only scored 12 points, and the defense scored I guess they technically scored 12 points as well, because the special teams kicked 2 extra points. But the defense accounted for 14 of Pittsburgh's 26 points, and and when Cleveland was kind of battle weekend, and then they also had that horrible, the horrible Chubb injury, but New Orleans against Carolina, it seemed like New Orleans was comfortably ahead, but then Carolina kicked a late field goal to make it 20-17, and the spread was 3, and we both had, I think, New Orleans in that game, not only winning outright, but also they were favored by 3, but ended up being a push because of that late field goal. So we both kind of, those late field goals turned into pushes, which could have helped
helped one or both of us, depending on the game. Yeah, so we it seems like we've struggled the most this week at the over-unders. Last week was heavily week 1 of the NFL season was heavily under. Most of the teams didn't cover the over-under line. But week 2 was very different. 13 overs hit the week. And we were still betting fairly heavily to the under. You were 7 of 16. I was 8 of 16 on the over-under, but that was by far our worst category. Do you see yourself shifting maybe selectively to more overs this week because of that 13 and 3 over versus under?
I was more under week 1. I was more over week 2. So I was wrong both of the times. So I wasn't really looking at either one. I'm just looking at the games individually, what I think there will be. So
yeah,
I think that will even out in the end, but it's looking weird right now for me. So that's where my real money has been lost. It seems like some of the money line games in the first week I also did poorly, but this week I think I did well. I made money on both the spread and the money line here. So I was in the positive, but then it was the over under that didn't. So I think I'm getting there. So maybe, I'm still down quite a bit for the year because my first week was so bad. But this is one of those things where I kind of know that I shouldn't bet week 1 because I don't know what's going to happen. And so if I wait, maybe as time goes on, maybe I'll have a better feel for each of these teams and what the scores might be. So we'll see. We just have to keep plugging it out. Unfortunately, I'm not using any of my real money to find out what these things are. Right. So, but the results are helpful. How about you, Dr. Scaff? Are you just going to keep stay the course, or are you going to tweak anything to try to make even more money as you go on?
Yeah, I think I'll probably try to stick to the same strategy on the spread money lines. I was 11 of 16 on the money line this week, which was pretty solid. But I think I'm going to work, to make sure I pick a little more heavily on the overs this week. I think traditionally it seems like the offenses take a little more time to get in sync. And once that happens, I think the offenses tend to, score more points. But I didn't expect it to happen that early in the season. We'll have to see what the lines do, I guess, if the over under lines as a whole for the NFL start to go up this week, then maybe there won't be too much of a change. But if they're about the same point totals this week as they were last week, then I'm probably going to be betting a little more towards the over this time.
Yeah, because the Vegas guys, they are watching these results even more closely than we are, and they are accounting for each of these changes and trying, so it's very, very difficult, of course, to win against the house. But you are winning so far. I think you made over $500 this week, and you're at 500 and almost $560 over the 2 weeks up now. I only lost about $55 this week, and so but I am now almost about $1,900 in the hole. So I am $2,600 or so less than you right now. So I'm way behind, but I lost a bunch in the first week. I lost only a tiny bit. So if these trends continue, I'm going to be making zillions of. If I make $1,500 more dollars than next week than I made this week, I'm really headed to.
You'll have passed me in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
basically, that's what it looks like, right?
Well, we'll talk about our bets this week and see how we do. But do you have any other comments about this week 2 in the NFL?
I was going to say maybe just this, that you were exactly the 54% correct picks this week. I think it was just unfortunate that some of that 54% was on the money line in games that the payout was a little low. So the 54, that's kind of one of the things I've been wanting to see is if that number, how accurate that number is. The 54%, I think, is the number that is usually quoted as being the number of bets you need to be, correctly getting to be able to make money at this.
I think that's more correct. Like if it's the spread or the over under the coin flip bets.
If they're relatively even odd games, yes,
the money line can
So I was at 60% correct picks this week, and was up $531. So out of the $4,800, about 10%.
Yeah, the Lebanese dream is really becoming a force to be reckoned with in the world of NFL sports betting. We'll see if that can come on or continue in weeks 3 through 18. But should we move on for a brief interlude with talking about the Kansas City Royals, who have won several games, more than we thought, but of course it's way too little, way too late.
Yes.
They won again tonight against the Cleveland Guardians.
They did hold on.
7-6. They're now 50-102. So the most losses, they have 10 more games. The most losses they can now have is 112. Do you think the Royals can win 55 games? Do you think they can go 5-5 in their last 10? They've won, I think, 5 of the last 6, right?
Yes. Since our last episode, they are 5-1.
Yeah. So what do you?
I'm gonna say they will. If it was an over under 5 wins, I would not take the over. I think they'll win exactly 5 games. That would be my.
You think it's a push?
I would say I would bet on the push if you can bet on the push.
Bet on the push. Oh, that would be a lot of money probably on the push.
It's an exact win total. Yes.
Yeah. Exact win total. Yeah. 10-1 probably, I guess, right? Because you would say, well, I don't know, maybe less. I don't know, because you're more likely to win 5 than you are out of 10 than you are to win 10 or 0. It's like
yes,
random coin flips. It's gonna there's gonna be some noise, on the edge, but like it's gonna be mostly, well, they're gonna win probably somewhere between 3 and 7 games.
Yeah, maybe 6 because it's the Royals.
Yeah, so like it's somewhere in there in the if you roll dice, lucky 7 is you'll get that 1/6 of the time. So maybe get 6-1 on 5.
Well, and the final 6 games of the year are meaningless. The opponents are not in the playoff race by any means either. So they should be, the other team isn't playing for anything either. The Royals seem to care more about winning games that don't matter than other teams are. Would be my.
Well, you might think maybe it matters for Matt Quatraro, because if the team is only like, it's not 115 loss team, which would have been like historically bad, and if not for the Oakland A's, the worst, one of the worst records in history. This year, the Royals are still the second worst team in major leagues, but they're about 2.5 games above, or 3 games maybe above now, the A's, and they're comfortably, I would say probably, not comfortably ahead of the A's, but they aren't going to be written into like the annals of the worst all-time teams. Probably you maybe lose 10 straight at the end and they're 15-112. That's not so good, but they'll win a few at least, and it'll be like a I was at maybe a couple weeks ago, we were thinking, will they lose 115 games at least? That was where we were. So they're improved. Maybe this is what keeps Quatraro's job, which maybe is a victory for him, but maybe not for the Royals.
I don't think he has anything to do with anything. I think it's the problems with the franchise are higher up than the manager.
You don't think the bullpen use, or if you look at the expected win-loss rates, the Royals should be 57-95 rather than 50-102. So they should have won about 7 more games if they had, just sort of average luck. And I think over the course of a season, it kind of evens out.
Don't get me wrong. Quatraro's decision making has been complete garbage. I mean, completely garbage. But what I don't want to see is this group of administrators, like above the manager, making decisions about the new manager. You want all of that to be cleaned out before they bring in new managers. That's what I would say.
And before they build the new stadium
Well, it better be before that.
in beautiful North Kansas City.
We don't need 5 more years of this, do we?
No. Have you heard anything about where the site is going to be? Is there?
I think maybe as early as next week is when they're supposed to announce their choice for site.
Oh, really? Has there been like
end of September?
Has there been a rumor that it's going to be downtown? What are the odds? Do you think it's going to be North Kansas City? Like North Kansas City has to be the underdog, you would think, though, right?
You would think, but after we looked at the stadium designs, I think we both agreed that the North Kansas City site almost has to be the choice. I don't know why you'd even consider the downtown site based on the view of the stadium from inside the park.
Yeah, because the view is, they're going to put the view either facing southeast or
west, I guess.
Yeah, the view.
Yeah,
well,
east,
like
east,
plate,
east,
would
east
be,
or southeast.
Yeah, and or at least south at some sort. Like if it's just kind of plain south, you could see downtown from the seats in North Kansas City, but you could only see like the east side of Kansas City, or maybe a few new buildings that the Royals build. And so it's not a downtown view. You don't get you don't get the skyline, you don't get Bartle Hall, you don't get the Sprint Center, you don't get any of that stuff.
None of it. Yeah.
So unless you're standing in the concourses looking away from the field, and which is nice, I guess. But the idea is that you want it on TV, you want to look at you want to see stuff, I think. But also the downtown's a little bit far away though too with in North Kansas City, so it's not ideal either way. But
no,
I would say I was thinking, I don't know, is it 70-30 probably downtown?
Probably somewhere in that area.
Why would you again, the question is, why would you move it like out if you wanted a downtown stadium and you want a new stadium, why move it to another place that's not downtown?
Yeah,
but it's closer, I guess, and it's sort of in the new kind of vibrant hipster Brooklyn area of Kansas City, North Kansas City, which is a little strange since
I just saw something recently too that I think they have like an actually different tax setup too for North Kansas City. Like they may not pay like earnings taxes, and so the team may want to move it there for tax reasons. And I don't know.
But things have to change for like the community, because there's a Jackson County tax that went to the sports complex, and at least if you move it downtown, you're still keeping it in Jackson County rather than moving to Clay County, which will alter things. And because again, some money is going to be on a sales tax, and usually Kansas City doesn't mind putting sales taxes on, because it's gone steadily up since we were kids. I think it was about 6% when we were kids. Now it's like 10%. It seems like the Kansas City sales tax. It's just a lot. It just they like the regressive taxes in Kansas City.
It's even 11 and 12% in certain like entertainment areas.
Oh wow, yeah,
it's pretty high in certain areas.
And also the hotel taxes and rent-a-car taxes; those are usually popular taxes, because the idea is like, oh, the residents we don't pay those. It's just those out-of-town goobers that come in, and they don't. What are they going to do? Not rent a car or not stay in a hotel? They pay a 18%, 20% tax. So I don't. Yeah. Local taxes are kind of funny, but so that'd be interesting. Maybe so probably, but not by next week's episode, but maybe the week after we'll know the.
Yeah, I think maybe towards the end of next week they may have the announcement somewhere in that area, possibly the week after, but it's up to them. It's like their whim basically as to when they'll make the announcement, because I don't think they're like taking input from the communities or areas that they're looking to move into as to what their decision is. I think that's it's fully on their shoulders, and then they'll deal with whatever municipalities they have to after the decision is made.
I think the Chiefs, if anything, are probably pro moving them, because they think, well, we can build a new Arrowhead right next door. We don't have to like look for a interim site or like build it in a weird place on the parking lot or something like that, and if that happens, or build a new GEHA field or whatever they're going to call it, Acrisure Stadium. Acrisure Stadium West. Maybe all the stadiums will be called Acrisure in the future.
Eventually.
We'll some sort of soulless corporate entity will take over all of the stadiums, and we won't have any local. Yeah, because I think they also want us. They want. I'm sure they want a corporate name on the new stadium. They don't. I doubt they will keep Kauffman or Royals Stadium.
Did you like what they did with the Oakland Coliseum though, where it was like overstock.com
It
was
was
the
O.co for a
it
while,
was
yeah.
still o.co. Yeah, so it's
Yeah, I
Oakland
like that.
Coliseum, overstock.com.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like that. I like that. I
It
used to
wasn't quite so overtly ridiculous.
yeah.
Like the crypto.com instead of the Staples Center, right?
Yeah, I guess the
That's what it
Staples
was.
Center is not much better. Like it's still just the office supplies
No, but
company,
that
right?
no, but now it's the crypto.com or whatever is the name of the
Oh, is it?
what's the Staples Center.
Oh.
It's like the crypto.com arena or something like that.
Well, that's pretty bad because of it's just a
Yeah.
scam. But I think well, I guess it was like that with the Livestrong Park when they had
Yeah.
I guess Livestrong wasn't a scam, but it was Lance Armstrong was a pretty unsavory figure. And
Enron.
Enron Field, yeah, yeah.
It became what did it become after that?
Minute Maid Park for a
Minute
while.
Maid, yeah, that's it.
I don't know what it is
Like there
now.
can't be anything more wholesome than orange juice.
Orange juice, yeah. It's a Coca-Cola brand of orange juice, but it's still better than a shady electric company, semi quasi public, private. I don't know what it was. It was yeah.
Yeah. Well, a complete collapse of a giant
Well,
corporate
yeah.
agency. Big stuff.
WorldCom, Lehman Brothers,
Yeah.
something. Merrill Lynch Park, yeah,
Yeah. Fannie Mae.
yeah, yeah. Well, maybe GEHA will go. Maybe there'll be some sort of weird health insurance collapse, and Acrashore and all of these entities will go down. But I don't know. Do we have any more Royals news? I don't think we really do. There's, I guess
Yeah.
Singer and Brady Singer and Brad Keller have both been shut down for the year,
Hmm.
and
Two more catchers have been called out.
they've really gone through because Sally has had a concussion, so maybe he is hopefully maybe all shut down, or at least maybe only going to play a couple games later as a DH.
Yeah.
Um,
But did you find it weird that Melendez is below the double A catcher on the catcher depth charts?
yeah,
Now
they
that he's
really don't want him as catcher. It seems like they're really
yeah.
trying to get him to be a outfield outfielder right now, and he's not very good, but I don't know, maybe it's a long-term project, maybe he'll be all right, but yeah, I don't know, it's a little strange because you think that's why Melendez is on the team, partly because he has that versatility on defense and he can play catcher, but the Royals have not done that. And it's also one of those things where you think, well, being a catcher maybe isn't as intense in terms of some of the nuances as it used to be, because you have the pitch calling electronically now, and that can probably also be done with the dugout communication. I'm sure there's some communication there. The idea of pitch framing is not supposed to be as important anymore because of the the sort of looming specter of the robot umpires that are going to call balls and strikes. So people are really paying attention to that more. So it's
The
I don't know.
umpires don't seem to be.
Well, the idea
They
is
don't
that,
seem to be worried for their jobs at all because they
well, you
have
have a
been
few guys here and there
terrible this year.
calling good games. Who was that umpire who called the perfect game in the World
Oh,
Series?
no, I don't remember now.
Um,
No, got nothing.
22. Yeah, it was Pat Hoberg, America's most accurate, Major League Baseball's most accurate umpire. He called a perfect game in Game 2 of the 22 World Series.
Yeah.
He was yeah, he was really good. He was also pretty good. Yeah, he's MLB's best. I would say like Angel Hernandez or Joe West or somebody is probably one of the worst. But we don't need to go through Major League Baseball umpiring, at least not until we get to the playoff race. We'll talk more about baseball playoffs, but the Royals are comfortably out of it and we'll be able to have a nice long vacation. So should we move on to week 3 of the NFL?
Let's do
And
it.
our potential bets. So we've each made 3 of our best bets, our best picks, and we'll talk about those today. Well, the Chiefs game also coming up. We didn't bet on the Chiefs. We talked a little bit about the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are favored by 12.5. Do you think the Chiefs win? Do you think they cover? For your initial thought, what do you think this is a bounce back game for the offense? What do you think is going to happen here with the Chiefs Bears?
Yeah, I think hopefully this is the offense gets right game, and everything, the running game picks up a little bit, just enough to let maybe the wide receivers get a little more open at times, so that Mahomes actually has a chance to find somebody. I think that it's hard to think that they won't do well in this game, but that doesn't mean they won't. I expect them to win and cover, possibly even challenge the over number nearly by themselves.
I think it's 47.5, something like that. So like you think maybe Chiefs are 40 plus this game, you hope.
You would think. I don't know how they don't, but we'll see.
Okay.
I mean,
I like that too. I don't know.
The late afternoon slate has some pretty lopsided.
I'm a little bit worried that maybe this will be a little bit of a slump that the Chiefs offense had like a couple of years ago when they went through like a 5 or 6 game stretch where they couldn't do a whole lot. But I hope that's not the case, because I like you said, you think it's the Chiefs offense is getting in sync, or it will, with the young receivers and once Kelsey gets on board. I hope that. I do worry though that maybe the offense under Nagy and even under Reed maybe is a little stale compared to maybe like a Mike McDaniel offense in Miami or something like that, where it seems like he's getting a lot out of Tua, or some of these offenses that are or even what's going on in San Diego, or not San Diego, Los Angeles, the Chargers. They're scoring a lot of points with new guy Kellen. Maybe there's something different and new, but I think Reed is still really good at finding individual plays, but I wonder if the scheme is becoming a little stale. I don't know. That's my worry.
I would think that if they can clean up some of the penalties, some of those drives would have continued.
Yeah,
and I think they had 8 penalties on the offense, and that really, if it's supposed to be 3rd and 2 and now it's 3rd and 7, well, that's kind of a big difference. Or 2nd and 15 instead of
It's still one of those things you expect the Chiefs to make it every time because they have Mahomes. And so that's hard. It's almost every time I think the Chiefs don't score on their drive, I'm surprised. And I don't, so I like that, but I also worry that that's not always going to be the case. But I hope this is the Chiefs kind of get right game. You're looking for a bounce back week of your own on the best bets. I'm looking for a bounce back week on the whole, but I want to continue my stellar success from last week. What is your first game that you're making a high confidence bet on? What's your lock? What's your first lock of the week, Dr. Scaff?
My first lock of the week is the betting on the team that I got, the only pick I got right last week. Miami is going to be playing Denver in Miami, I believe.
Altitude.
Yeah, it is in Miami, just to make sure. The Broncos have not looked very good so far. Miami's favored by just shy of a touchdown. I've got Miami minus 6.5.
Okay, so the Broncos have played 2 home games. They're 0-2. The Dolphins have played 2 road games. They're 2-0. So do you think that you wonder are these trends going to continue for both teams in their winning or in their home performance versus away performance? I haven't decided on that game yet. I want to see maybe by Thursday when we make our today's Thursday for you listeners, but it's Tuesday for us here at the Power. We record this a little bit early, so I want to wait until I can get the best number and see what shakes out for that game. But I could see Miami just rolling, but I could also maybe see Denver kind of keeping it close. But I would lean towards Miami right now, but I that wasn't one of my locks. My first lock was actually involved teams again that I have bet on earlier this season. 2 teams I have been correct one team I've been correct with each time, and that was with the Cleveland Browns. I predicted them to beat the Bengals and cover and all those things, and I got the over under right, I think, in that game too. And I also got all three of those right in the Pittsburgh Cleveland game. So I'm betting against I'm betting on Tennessee at Cleveland. There is a Cleveland, Tennessee. Did you know that?
I didn't. But it's not that Cleveland.
I believe it's the second largest Cleveland in the United States. I'd have to look that up. Cleveland, Ohio, of course, is the largest, and the game will be played in Cleveland. The Titans are 3.5-point underdogs. Cleveland is 3.5-point favorites at home. I don't know if this is partly continue my bets against Deshaun Watson, but also I think Tennessee is better than people think. So 3.5 was a lot. I think it's gone actually down to 3 in some places. So I got it at 3.5. So I'm going to do Tennessee plus 3.5 in Cleveland. I think it's going to be close. I don't know if Tennessee's going to win, but I think I like the 3.5 points.
They don't have to win. They just have to cover. That's it, right? They just have to lose by less than 4 points, and then you're fine. Yeah. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Tennessee did play a lot better in their last game.
Yeah, they did. It was, I guess New Orleans is tough on the road, and but I think Tannehill hasn't been, he's injured a lot of last year, so maybe he's just getting back into the sync. He's getting old though too. You hope he doesn't fall off a cliff. But they still have Derrick Henry. They have DeAndre Hopkins. Traylon Burks has looked better as wide receiver too. So I and the defense has always been strong. So I like Tennessee plus 3.5. I just looked at Cleveland, Tennessee, and Cleveland, Tennessee is a population of 47,356. It is so it is the 16th largest city in Tennessee. So I still think that's probably the second largest Cleveland. Maybe some of our intrepid astute viewers might correct me in this week's viewer mail, but I do think Cleveland, Tennessee is the second largest. And did you know that Cleveland, Tennessee has the 5th largest industrial economy in Tennessee?
Even of all Cleveland's? Oh.
It's pretty close, actually, to Chattanooga. And it was part of the Cherokee territory, and also may have been one of the first areas explored by Hernando de Soto. So, that's Cleveland's got a long history. It reminds me a little bit of you remember that line in Wayne's World where Alice Cooper was talking to Wayne and Garth about Milwaukee? He goes, you come to Milwaukee. I think Wayne goes, do you come to Milwaukee often or something? And he goes, well, and Alice Cooper goes, well, Milwaukee certainly has had its share of visitors. The Native Americans were trading here as early as something or other. He goes, yeah, isn't Milwaukee an Indian name? Goes, yes, Pete, it is. It's Algonquin for Milwaukee, Algonquin for the good land. Another fun fact about Milwaukee: it's the only major American city to elect 3 socialist mayors. So, but anyway, that reminded me of Cleveland, Tennessee, our little silence. I still quote Wayne's World, the movie from 31 years ago, probably now, 1992. I think it came out. It had that effect on me. But anyway, Tennessee at Cleveland plus 3.5. How about your first or your second bet of the week?
My second pick, I'm going to a set of teams who are both 0-2, and the line is even, so it's likely that somebody has to win, I think is what the idea is here. Chargers at Minnesota. Chargers scored a lot of points. I expect to see them win the games. I'm taking the Chargers even at Minnesota.
Ooh, Chargers at Minnesota. That's a coin flip game. Both teams are 0-2. Both teams need that victory to help their playoff chances. I think both of those teams were probably seen as at least playoff hopefuls going into the game.
Yeah.
Which team do you think so you think the Chargers look better in their 0-2 probably than the Vikings have in theirs?
Although I believe the Vikings did lose both of their games by only 1 score, which was their thing the other way last season. I think they were not. Did they win? What was it? 9, 11 games last season by one score?
I think they won, yeah, something like 11 in a row or something, 13. And I think maybe even 13 and 0 in one score games or something like that. They only won like one game that they were, I think they were 13 and 4. I think they only won 1 or 2 games that wasn't by one score.
Yeah.
And they were blown out basically in all their losses. And this year, maybe the numbers are not quite in their favor. But yeah, I think that's an interesting game as well. It's also, is it, what time is the game? Is it noon or is it's a noon game? Or 1 o'clock game.
It is a noon Central Time game.
Okay, so it's early for the Chargers. That's also when Kirk Cousins shines, those early windows when not a lot of eyes are on him. You know, he had a lot of eyes on him in Philadelphia this past week. You could also say the only teams that Minnesota's lost to are both 2-0 now, since they lost to the Buccaneers and the Eagles. So maybe, but I guess since the Chargers lost to a 1-1 now Titans team. So, you know, maybe you could make that argument for the Vikings. I might pick the Vikings just to be different, but also that would probably just widen the gap between me and you too. So I'll think about it. But yeah, I think theoretically, I think the Chargers should be, you know, they're scoring a lot of points. It's in a dome, so it doesn't seem like the weather's going to be it's like not like they're going to, and you know, Minnesota in the winter and there's no dome or something like that. So it's you know, it's sterile conditions. I think that's when Justin Herbert can probably do well. Although you think maybe with the turf, maybe 2 or 3 Chargers receivers are going to be injured. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams out for the season, or out for 6 to 8 weeks, and then coming back and kind of, you know, that seems to happen to the Chargers. They haven't had their injury bug yet, so.
They did lose Eckler, I think.
They did lose Austin Eckler. Yeah, okay.
He didn't play in the second game, so, and I think that was part of why they didn't play quite as well in that second game.
Is he supposed to be back?
I don't know. I haven't heard, but I know he missed the second game, or I heard he was supposed to.
I see Chargers news injury updates for Austin Eckler. Eric Kendricks are bleak.
Ooh.
No timetable for return, so that might not be good.
And I don't actually know what happened to him. I just know that he was supposed to miss game 2.
Okay, but I don't think the Chargers are a bad pick, and I think they could certainly win that game. My second pick also deals with that game, the Chargers in Minnesota. I decided to stay away from the spread, however, and focus on the over/under, which hasn't been that great for me overall this year, but it worked for me last week with the Bears Bucks. I think the Charger and the over/under for that game is high. It's 54.5. It's actually, I think, gone down some places, down to 53.5. So I think I'm on the right side of this. I think it's going to be under 54.5. So I like Chargers at Minnesota under 54.5. It's still, you know, it could be higher scoring than that, but I think like I think you seem to think if the Chargers win, maybe Minnesota's not going to score a lot of points. And, you know, I could see, you know, if it's a, you know, 35 to even a 35-17 game or something like that would still be under. And so I like the possibilities of the under there, even though I think both of those offenses are pretty good, but the Vikings offense hasn't looked so good lately. So maybe they missed Dalvin Cook as a, you know, I think Madison's pretty good, but he's not, I don't think he's right Dalvin Cook, but I like the Chargers Vikings under 54.5.
I think the Chargers scored 58 points in the first game, in the first 2 games, to be a 29-point average. They've given up 63 points, 31. Or are you worried that they will follow that trend?
I'm somewhat worried, I guess, but I also think the Vikings, well, I don't know. I think the Chargers defense is bound to improve a little bit. They aren't going to be that bad all year. I think as well that the Chargers offense might not be that potent all year either. And I don't know. I 54.5 is a lot of points in a football game usually. So unless it's, you know, 28-27, you know, which it could be, I like the chances of going under, you know. So for one of these things, even my locks of the week, you're never sure, even if it's a lock here at the Werman headquarters, but I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
How about your third pick? What is your third shoe in of the week or your third lock of the week?
Third pick is uh picking against another AFC West team. Picked for an AFC West team earlier today. Now I'm going to pick against an AFC West team. Pittsburgh is a 2.5 point underdog at the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders have shown much so far. I'm not super worried about them. Maybe Pittsburgh's defense can pick up a defensive score here or there, maybe like they did against Cleveland. I've got Pittsburgh plus 2.5.
Okay. Pittsburgh's offense hasn't been very good, so maybe relying on defensive scores is not necessarily a path to victory. But you think, well, Trubisky was, I mean, not Trubisky, Kenny Pickett was so good in the preseason. Maybe they're bound to break out, have some success against the Raiders, who haven't been so good. You also say, well, maybe this is Garoppolo's time to shine. I don't know. I kind of like Pittsburgh getting those points. I think it's going to be probably a close game, but I don't really have a feel on who's going to win that game. So if I were you, I would take Pittsburgh simply, and I might wait and see what kind of happens with the line, whether if late Raider money comes in or something like that, I might open it up a little higher even. For plus 3.5, I would really like. I don't know if it's gonna would do that, but if it moved maybe closer to even, I don't know what I'd do. But I do like Pittsburgh's chances. I thought coming in this year they were a pretty good team, and I thought they were a potential kind of playoff sleeper. I thought that the Raiders probably would not be. So even with Garoppolo, so I like that. I like that pick too. I am also venturing. Well, I'm not venturing out west. I'm taking another West Coast team. So I bet both. So I'm betting both games involving the Los Angeles teams in this. So there are again 2 Monday night games this week for some reason, and the later one I think is. I mean, it's the earlier one. I don't remember which one. It's one of the Monday night games. It's the Rams at the Bengals. The Rams have been they're 1-1 this year. Won at Seattle, lost at home to San Francisco, which is pretty much like a home game for San Francisco because there are no Los Angeles fans. I think the Rams have a few more fans than the Chargers do, but it's there's not a lot of home field advantage. So I think the Rams are used to playing against in hostile areas. So the Rams are at Cincinnati. Cincinnati, of course, is 0-2. Their offense hasn't looked very good. But I think they're bound to get on track sooner or later, and I think the Rams' offenses look pretty surprisingly good. So, I decided to take an over/under here as well. It's 43.5, so pretty low. It's 11 points lower than the Chargers, Minnesota. And I think both the Rams and the Bengals have potential to have very good offenses. They have good quarterbacks. They have some good, surprising wide receivers, even without Cooper Kupp. Puka Nakua has had some really good games. I picked him up on my fantasy team luckily last week. He's on the bench though, but I did pick him up.
He had a pretty good game though. I think he's set a record for what completions and yardage for rookie
in his first 2 games.
In his first 2 games,
yeah. So he's been really good, and so maybe he is the new Cooper Kupp, or it seems like Or also it seems like, well, if Stafford can throw all these, these new guys on the Rams can make all these big catches and big yards. Why can't the Chiefs have some of these guys do that same thing? Because Puka was not even, he was a 4th round pick or something like that. He was not a very high draft pick. And, Cooper Kupp's gone, he's been injured again with his hamstrings acting up. So, but anyway, I like the Rams offense, and I still like the Bengals offense as well. I think, even if even if Joe Burrow hurt himself a little bit, his calf again, I still think together those teams can get it over 43.5. So I like the over in that one.
It looks like the Rams have averaged about 26 points a game. And the Bengals have given up 26 points a game, so you think that's okay
Yeah,
for the Rams at least anyway. That's over. That's well over half the points needed for the over.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I think Cincinnati
not
is they're
crazy.
at home, so they're gonna play well, I think. So like,
Yeah.
I 28-20 will put me comfortably over. So I don't know necessarily which way the game's going. I know Cincinnati's, I'm sure, is favored by some. I don't, if I would maybe take the points with the Rams depending on what the number was. I don't, but I do like the over there. That's my. I'm probably more confident. I'm more confident about that over than I am about the under 54.5. So it's lockier than the second
Ooh.
lock. It's the lock. It's the shoest in of
Ooh.
my week.
It
So
looks
take
like
that to the bank.
the Bengals are favored by 2.5.
Okay. If it gets over 3, I might take the Rams, but
Yeah.
I guess I might take the Bengals if it's only 2. So
Bengals could be 0-3 though. That's
yeah, the Bengals could be 0-3, and then that would be very difficult, especially in their division, because I think all 3 of those teams in that division, even if Cleveland looked pretty bad, they don't have Chubb, they're still a decent team. They have a good defense, and they have Deshaun Watson, despite his ickiness, is still a solid quarterback in the NFL, I think, normally. And yeah, the Ravens have looked very good, and I think the Steelers are a solid team too. So yeah, it's gonna be tough to overcome that deficit.
It is another full slate of games, and that is the primetime Monday night game.
The 8:15.
Yeah.
Eastern.
Not be like a matinee
Yeah,
sort of
it's
game. I don't know.
yeah. I don't know why they're I know they used to have the Monday night doubleheader because it was the first day and everybody it was kind of celebration opening week, and then they kind of moved back. But then like I don't know why there's 2 games 2 weeks in a row, but yeah, it's fun I guess if you can.
Are they doing that in week 4 also?
No, I think it's just these 2 weeks. I looked.
No, not week 4. Yeah.
And so, are there any other games on the slate that interest you at all, Dr. Scaff, that you think are important either in terms of kind of standings and potential playoff seedings down the road, or just kind of fun matchups or things that you might you find particularly attractive?
I'm yeah, some of the games are pretty lopsided this week. There are a couple like 10 plus points
Yeah, a lot of big spreads. New York
spreads.
Giants at San Francisco on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Saquon is going to play. The Giants did eke out a victory over the Cardinals. We thought for a while they were shut out by the Cardinals too. They're like, are they going to score any points at all this season?
Yeah, the whole season. And then they came roaring back.
But Barkley was hurt. But I think I still think that's a lot of points for San Francisco to cover at home on a Thursday. You never know what's going to happen on Thursday.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs are big favorites, as are, I think, understandably, the Cowboys at the Cardinals, big favorites. So those are kind of, and I think the Buffalo Washington game could be bad. Houston at Jacksonville is also a big spread.
I was going to say the Buffalo Washington game could be interesting just to see what happens anyway, because the Commanders' defense I think is actually pretty decent.
Yeah, I guess you could say.
And Allen's kind of struggled, less so in the second game, but in the first game he definitely did not look very good, and he took a lot of
the Jets and the Jets and the Commanders are kind of similar teams, especially with the injury to Rodgers, and so the Jets did very well, and I guess the Bills did very poorly against the Zach Wilson led and lost that game in New York, and they're going to Washington, so maybe they'll have similar struggles. So maybe 6.5 is too many points then on the road for Buffalo.
So which team would you be more comfortable with if you were, having to pick to watch one of the teams, the Jets or the Commanders?
If I had to, so if
you're
I was
forced to watch all of the remaining games this season, Mike, these are the only games you have available to you, is either all Jets games or all Commanders game.
I think it would be all Commanders.
Which team would you choose?
I live in Maryland, so I would say for local interest, I would follow the Commanders. So like they would be one of my like in some ways I could say they're probably I've grown close to Pittsburgh in the last couple of years because of MJ, but in terms of like teams that aren't going to be big rivals of the Chiefs, they're in the NFC, they're the localist NFC team, and that if localist is a word, but most local NFC team, so I would say maybe I'd pick the Commanders, but they're I don't know, Sam Howell at least maybe is a more unknown quantity at quarterback. We know Wilson isn't very good, maybe unfortunately for him, but I don't know. I would I guess say, although it's fun to kind of enjoy I guess the Jets wouldn't be involved in more primetime matchups. They would play better teams, although the Washington plays the NFC East, but the Jets play the Chiefs, so I'd be able to watch the Chiefs one time versus zero times. So maybe I would pick the Jets simply because they play the Chiefs and they play some of the Chiefs more competitive opponents as the season will go on. But in terms of rooting interest, maybe I would pick the Commanders. But
which team do you think is more comfortable with their quarterback? Sam Howell. I think the Commanders are more comfortable with Howell as their quarterback than the Jets are comfortable with
Zach Wilson, huh?
With Zach Wilson.
I do think
Aaron Rodgers.
They picked Howell. They didn't want to. They could have gotten somebody else, but they decided we're going to stick with Howell. So I guess they are more comfortable. Whether or not that's wise to be more comfortable with Howell, I think that's another question. But I think, at least in Ron Rivera's mind, he's pretty happy with Sam Howell. I would say certainly happier than Robert Saleh is with Wilson. Even if they think Wilson is better, because we had Aaron Rodgers and now we're stuck with Zach Wilson, and so like there's no. So even if you think he might be better, it's like
you're already settling.
We had a Ferrari, choice. And now we have a used Chevy, and we got a slightly newer used Cavalier in Sam Howell, and so maybe that's what we'll go with.
Or is the problem more of you're still stuck with Nathaniel Hackett if you're
that's also true. You have Eric Bieniemy. Yeah, he's a much better coordinator, I think, than Nathaniel Hackett. And he certainly should have been given a head coaching job years before Nathaniel Hackett. And I don't think Hackett should even be an offensive coordinator because I think he sucks. But Bieniemy's proven, I think, that he's a solid offensive coordinator, even if he wasn't always the number one offensive mind on the team, but he's got to read. But is Matt LaFleur as the number one offensive mind on the Packers? He's not Kreskin himself. So I wouldn't say that he's an innovative genius. You could say that for Reed, at least in the past, maybe still in the maybe think of him as one of the top coaches in league history. So so I'd be more comfortable if I were Washington. I think those are really interesting questions, Dr. Scaff. I really had to think about those. And there aren't any really good options because I would be if I had to become a fan of those teams, I would say there aren't any good options because they would lose most of the games. But if I wanted to watch good matchups and things like that, at least for now, the Jets are in prime time a lot. They're probably going to get flexed out a lot as the season goes on. But they do play the Chiefs in a couple of weeks, and that'll be a Sunday night game.
The week it's week 4, I believe.
Yeah, and they'll play, so
Sunday night game.
Yeah, Sunday night. And then they go, I think, to the Broncos, and that could be interesting if both of those teams are struggling. Would you rather have it's the matchup of the kind of beleaguered Wilson quarterbacks, Zach versus Russell, and that could be fun. But also could be a really bad game, like what that awful Denver San Francisco game early last season. That was a Monday night or Sunday night game. It was like 10-9 or 11-10 or something, and like one of them was like a safety when who ran out of the back of the end zone? Was that? I think that was when Garoppolo was still quarterback for the 49ers when he backed out of the end zone, like
I just remember the Dan Orlovsky one is the one I always remember because it looked so funny because he ran so far out at the back And then he kept going like he was, like, oh, this is fine. You can do this.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Yeah.
And now he's one of the top ESPN NFL analysts.
Sometimes, well, if you can't can't do teach. So
You're not supposed to judge a person by, the one play that they
yeah,
did.
that's
That
their
was
worst moment.
ridiculous. Like
Even Mahomes has had
Mark,
some pretty bad
Mark Sanchez and the butt fumble. Like that's not Tony
hole
Romo with the
in
flub
the
hold. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Even
For
Mahomes
the
has had
place
some really bad interceptions that he's thrown and
Yeah.
things like that. So it's yeah. But Orlovsky was, his great moments weren't very great either because he didn't play in the league very long. But
Yeah.
Romo had certainly more success than Mr. Orlovsky. But we'll see how much success we have this week with our bets, our locks, and our comprehensive picks. And we'll also see how much success the Chiefs have, see how much success the Royals might have in wrapping up their essentially lost season. Anything else you're looking forward to next week, Dr. Scaff?
No, I don't think so.
Well, we'll talk about this.
Just that. Those are the
Something
only
will happen in
things.
college football. Maybe in Colorado, we'll see if they can beat Oregon. They've been maybe the story so far this year, but they barely beat Colorado State, who they were favored at home. They were favored by 3 touchdowns, and then then the students stormed the field even when they beat a less heralded rival. So we'll see what happens when they actually play a really good team.
It was an intense game, but
yeah.
That still doesn't seem like a field storming scenario.
Yeah. So like if the Chiefs play the Bears really tough and they win in overtime, should the Chiefs fans storm? It seems like it's that kind of. I guess in professional football they'll storm the field anyway. But it seems it's a little bit like one of those things. It's like I guess it's your big rival, or it's not really. It's Colorado. Colorado is Colorado State's big rival. Colorado's big rival was like, well, it used to be Nebraska, or it used to be, or it's Utah maybe now, or something like that. But but we certainly have no rivals here on the Warning Track Power Hour in terms of our observations, insights, and interesting tangents that we tend to take from time to time. Not as many this week. We had the Cleveland, Tennessee bit, but we weren't as I think off the wall this time. It seemed to be more straight and narrow, focused this week, which maybe is a positive for some viewers or listeners, maybe a negative for others. But we'll certainly do worse or better in the future. So you can keep
those are the choices.
You can take that to the proverbial bank. Just like we will take our winnings to the proverbial bank, since we are not actually making real bets, but we are simply planning our future heists if we become top gamblers, where we will fleece all of the institutions.
That is the official bank of the Warning Track Power Hour, is the proverbial bank.
Yes, first proverbial. Well, you got a good pause. I owe quite a bit of interest to First Proverbial right now.
We need to get a graphic up here, for a logo for this First Proverbial.
I'm sure it would have being a proverbial bank. It would have to have a very interesting slogan, or a very boring proverb kind of slogan, like a penny earned type of thing.
Right. We'll work on that for future.
Yeah, biblical proverb. I can't quite think of one with money that's a biblical proverb, but maybe we can think of one for First Proverbial.
We'll get there. This is in the ideation phase. We'll get there shortly.
Yeah. So we will certainly. Maybe we'll even have blueprints and plans of this proverbial bank even before the Royals have their blueprints and plans of the new stadium in 2028.
There we go.
Maybe we'll build ours also in scenic North Kansas City, located. Maybe that's where. Well, you're thinking that your pharmaceutical company may move to North Kansas City, so you could probably stick a vault right there, and
that's the goal. Or maybe First Proverbial will go into whichever site is unclaimed by the Royals.
Yes. Yeah,
we're waiting to see what their decision is, and then we'll place first proverbial there.
Well, there is a lot of banking history on that east side of downtown because that is where the Federal Reserve Bank is located. So it would be a good place to have. And Commerce Bank is close there. The big Commerce Bank building with the classic neon sign, the circle sort of basketball globe pattern that it had. That I always looked when I was a kid. I like that Commerce Bank. Is it still light up and switch like that, or is it always the same?
I think
now?
it's static now.
I like the
that's the building that I lived in though, was Commerce Tower.
Oh yeah, you did, yeah.
Yeah. Then the actual Commerce headquarters moved to the building south of that. But the building that you're talking about is now these are residential.
No, it's no longer a bank.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it will be the future home of First Proverbial Bank if you move back there.
Yes. Right.
Or if I happen to move to Kansas City for some weird reason. But not I like Kansas City, but right now my life circumstances do not seem like going back to Kansas City anytime soon to live, unless I have maybe a condo in
there you
go. Since I'll be making so much money from these NFL picks, I won't know what I'll have to have vacation homes in, Tahoe and San Tropez and Kansas City.
Those big sponsorships from First Proverbial Bank. You'll be able to afford all those.
We'll have to put it on our logo, like on our uniforms and things like that. Well, I think we've made up for more than enough with our sort of inane odd ramblings at the end of Morning Trek Power Hour. So before we can do any more damage to our reputation or to our viewers' psyches, we will sign off this week. And as always, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Morning Trek Power Hour. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel or our many podcast vehicle delivery services. And until next week, we wish you good luck with your betting and your teams as the Major League Baseball season winds down and the football seasons in both college and the NFL rev up. And until then, we wish you good day.